Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Lily Allan Duenas. Together, we'll talk about the world of yoga and we'll talk to people from around the world. Before diving into the episode, I wanted to invite you to head on over to my Patreon account. I would love your support, and I'm thrilled to have this beautiful community space where we can do yoga together, meditate together, and you'll get access to exclusive content. Get ready for some private Zoom Q&As, free printable art, meditation recordings, and more. Follow the link in the show notes to get started, or head on over to any of my social media channels or my website, wildyogatribe.com, to hang out, get to know each other better, and find out more about all the support and resources available to you. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. Namaste, family, and welcome back to the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Mugisha Ali Allan onto the show today. He's a yoga teacher from Uganda and is also a Hatha, vinyasa power, yin yoga, meditation instructor, and a trauma-informed yoga teacher. Mugisha is the founder of a really amazing yoga community in Uganda, as well as the Kindle Yoga Studio he's the co-owner of. And he teaches yoga with NGOs that support children, like Embrace Kulture and Aid Child Leadership Institute. So I'm so excited to dig in more, dive into this conversation with Mugisha. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you very much. My name is Mugisha Ali Allan, all the way from Uganda, and I'm really glad to be hosted at the Wild Tribe podcast.
Just to get started, how did yoga first come into your life?
That was really a tricky one because yoga into my life happened to come in 2015 when I was invited to be a part of a workshop and they were facilitating. And this workshop came to dancers. By then I was doing dance in 2015. And this was introduced by someone from the Africa Yoga Project that is in Kenya, but he came to Uganda. And they were paying some money, facilitation, to be a part of the workshop. I was like, why don't I make some money?
Oh, wow. So you actually were paid to do your first yoga workshop.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so then what made you like yoga and want to keep learning or keep practicing?
So when the workshop ended, the workshop happened for a whole week. And when it ended, I resumed with my life. And at some point, 1 year down the road, I happened to get a problem with my heart. And I was getting double beat and I was getting heart attacks. And the last heart attack lasted for about 45 seconds. That almost killed me. So waking up, I was in the hospital. And so my friends visited me. And then they told me that had I not stopped practicing yoga, I would be very okay. So that's when I started practicing and watching my diet. And when I went back to the hospital to check, they told me that the breathing capacity of my lungs had expanded, and otherwise, within the time that I got a heart attack, I couldn't even do workout for 30 minutes. Like my heart could react, and then I get more heart attacks. So, having had this healing through yoga, I decided to be more consistent with the practice. And in 2018, that's when I went for the teacher training.
Wow. So it sounds like yoga really, I don't want to say it saved your life, but yoga has been a real way to reach healing and to rebuild your health after such a huge health scare.
Yeah, I would say so because it is very common that in Uganda, few people have health care like insurance, and that is only the people who are like government workers or people who work for big companies. So like the people who don't have the privileges like that, who don't work for the company, can't know about their health. So it came by surprise. And then with yoga, at least I had to learn about my health. And that's the main reason I had to study, to share at least, to teach people about the wellness education.
Wonderful. And I know that you studied and was certified in yoga with the Pura Vida Foundation. Could you tell us more about that, what that is, and what it was like to be trained by them?
Yeah, I started with the Yoga Pura Vida Foundation, which is registered in Tanzania, but it was in cooperation, or they had alliance here with the Satyananda Yoga Center, which is in Brazil. And so the teachers came down to Africa in Tanzania, and that's where we had the teacher training. And so it was really amazing because that was my first time to leave my country to go to another country. It was for the teacher training. I had a training for Hatha Yoga where I studied the instrumental children's Hatha Yoga. And because I wanted to teach my yoga first to the children, because I know the best way is to start with children. And that's why I started with Yoga Pura Vida, and I didn't pay any money. They gave me a scholarship.
Amazing. I'm so glad they did that. And what country did you travel to do your certification?
Yeah, that certification I went to Tanzania.
Tanzania. Wow. And
Yeah.
then you did more certifications with the Karuna Yoga Journeys.
Yes.
And was that in Uganda?
Yeah, Karuna Yoga Journeys is in Uganda. And I did that teacher training. It was online because we're in the COVID, we're in the pandemic time. So I did with them, I did the yin yoga teacher training, 100 hour.
Great, great. And I know you mentioned you love teaching to children and you knew you wanted to start teaching yoga with the children. So tell us more about the NGOs that you work with to teach yoga.
So the first one is Embrace Culture, which is located in Entebbe. And this one works with children with a Down syndrome, epilepsy, cerebral palsy. So I just noticed that when I studied about touch as a therapy in the teaching children, it was more like a theory. But as I teach special children, it is always different because they love touch and they respond differently with touch. And usually I use games with them and they love it a lot. So it's really beautiful that I have to take individual focus to every child. And I know I happen to learn how it feels to be special and to feel love because it's so different that they perceive it differently.
That's amazing that you really spend the time to find what each child needs and what lights them up. So, do you go in and teach regularly with them? Is it always the same group with Embrace Culture, or is there different kids coming in every month, or what's that?
They are the same students, and every year they get every term they get new students who join them because the organization keeps looking for these special children because in Uganda it's not so normal like some people when they have special children they want to keep them home, they don't want them to go to school because they think they are not normal. We have few schools for special children, and the only way you of course have to teach them is to go to their schools because parents hide them. So, like school, these organizations look for them and they bring them in. If the parents can afford to pay for their school fees, they proceed and pay for them. And if they can't, they look for sponsors to keep them in school.
Okay. And what is their response in general to yoga?
They love yoga. They feel like it is a good way to stretch. And they like the games that are involved. So it is a beautiful practice for them and they love it.
Great. And so I know you also work with the AID Child Leadership Institute. Could you tell us more about that one?
Yeah. So HR Leadership Institute is an institute that supports children living with HIV/AIDS, and so a part of therapeutic practices, they do yoga, and we go through meditation with them. There are more ways like mindfulness that we get to engage them into accepting their bodies and getting to know themselves, building self-love, and of course building what we call the internal silence, or in yoga what we call the antamona, which builds acknowledgement and acceptance from deep within. And of course, they love the practice too, and they're always looking forward to the next class.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy. I just feel so much joy in my heart that you get to serve your community in this way, and specifically with the children. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was wondering, how do you think, or what do you think has changed in your life since you've become a yoga teacher? What has yoga changed for you?
First of all, I would say I've become more healthier because I was forced to eat a plant-based, but now I like it because I've embraced it and I've seen it becoming very important and good in my life. And I've expanded my connections. The most important thing, of course, is I earn respect because now I teach people who are even older than me. Because I would say my oldest student is about 75 years. And at least I've got a chance to be a part of someone's healing journey. And I love it that I'm earning a living, I'm making a living. It's very important because I live in a country where the economy is very tight and it's very hard to make money. And I'm using my practice to feed myself, to make myself a living, to pay my bills. And at least I'm inspiring people to live a good life. And I'm trying to do this to teach and show people how healthy they can live, and which makes me happy because I've seen my students. She came to my studio telling me she wanted to get pregnant. Of course, I didn't have any idea how yoga can work, but I told her if you're healthy, maybe some blockages can be clarified or can be worked over with the practice. Maybe sometimes you just need to make your body healthy by using some yoga with breathing practices. So that same year, she got pregnant, and she always says that the reason she has the baby. So I'm proud. I'm a part of a few people's healing journeys, and there are a couple of students who have come to me. One with multiple sclerosis, and as she was a part of my practice, she was getting like lots of improvements because the condition of multiple sclerosis gets people like numb. One side gets like paralyzed, and they have like excess fatigue and emotional instabilities, like unstable emotions. And this person told me that every time we were on the practice, she was getting better and better. And of course, one had to go for a knee surgery, and the doctors told her she had to do yoga or to go for a surgery. And she was in the practice for about 8 months. And when she went back, the doctor told her she's okay. She doesn't need to have the surgery. At least I'm happy that my practice is helping out people, and I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. I mean, you're changing people's lives.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, actually, Mugisha, what is your definition of yoga? How do you define yoga? Or if someone asks you, I don't know what yoga is, what is yoga? What do you tell them?
In spite of written definitions in the books that I've read, for me, yoga is the art and science of well being. Because this is what I've seen, because this is what I teach. Even doctors themselves, they read books, but I've seen most of them who don't believe in what they preach. And when I happen to teach them, it's totally different because I happen to teach doctors, surgeons from the emergency surgical ward in Entebbe, and it is so amazing when they are doing the practice. Like when I am teaching, things feel so new, and yet they've learned these things and they do them, so it feels so different. That's why I say it is the art and science of well-being, because we bring the art to life, and then they start learning the anatomy through their own bodies, connecting their mind with their body and feeling that vibration of energy, into the parts of the body that they are engaging through the practice and relating the practice to their normal life, I would say very much that it is the art and science of well-being indeed.
You said that beautifully. Absolutely beautifully.
Yeah.
And so I know in Entebbe, you have founded and are a co-owner of a yoga studio. Can you tell us more about that you're the founder of the Entebbe Yoga Community and the co-owner of Kindle Yoga Studio? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so when I left the teacher training, I promised myself that I will go out there, introduce the practice to the people who don't know it. And at least because yoga gave me a chance to live a healthy life, at least I would make sure that many people get a chance to practice in a safe zone, and at least a place where everyone is welcome. And when I went to Entebbe, I started calling out for people who can give me space. And people invited me in different places. And one of them was like an old gym that wasn't working anymore, and all the machines were out. And they gave me space, and I started sharing the practice there. But also, I was looking out for people who are practicing behind curtains, because there were people who are practicing yoga at their homes. And so I started looking out for them, like on Instagram. And like I used to look out their location, and if they are in Uganda, I could write to them and tell them, yo, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm in Entebbe, so if it's okay with you, you can come and we practice together. You can be a part of the community and we grow together. And so that's how I started to invite people to the studio. And that's where I started reaching out and looking out for teacher trainings for these people. Of course, teacher trainings are expensive, but there were chances of scholarships. I happened to secure 2 scholarships, and we have now 2 yoga teachers who are certified, and another one who is not certified yet, but she's been following her practice and she's sharing the knowledge she has. And that's how we are building our community, and it's growing bigger. Yeah, and it's not that big, but at least we share to different places in Entebbe. And even though the people are not so much receptive to the practice, at least we have a student or two who comes to the studio to teach, and we have backpackers or a guest house, which is a transit center, and people like come through when they're going to the airport and when they're coming back. And some people just wish to do practice, yoga practice, before they proceed to their journey. And that's how we've been able to hold up with the studio in Entebbe and the yoga community.
Amazing. I love that. I love that you reached out to people you didn't know on Instagram and you said, hey, if you're in Uganda, come practice and join this community. I love building communities. I love holding space for people to come together and share and collaborate and connect. Love that you're doing that for Uganda, Mugisha.
Thank you very much.
And you mentioned that people aren't very receptive to yoga in Uganda. Is that true? Do you feel like you face a lot of barriers or uncertainties with people in Uganda?
Yeah, I would like that is a real fact, because even like I've had colleagues go to like hospitals, myself going to the hospitals, and even doctors don't believe that the practice have the ability to heal and help people like get better or like help in any way. We have a big problem of religion. As leaders are so much against yoga. They say it is a cult. They say that people summon demons. And even when we try to explain and teach them, and myself, I'm a living testimony, and it just feels so different until people travel and come back and they say, I've traveled and people practice yoga, and now I believe I can do yoga. That's only the time people come to do yoga. And these are the very few people, because not everyone practices yoga. So youths, they've loved to do yoga because they see it in movies. Children love to do yoga because they've seen it in animations. For example, in Zootopia, so there was a yoga teacher who had dreadlocks, Yeah, so they love to do yoga because they see it in animations, and of course other people have loved to do yoga because of movies, and those are the very few people. And for the other people who have got a recommendation from hospitals, they of course expose people who have traveled around the world or to different countries where the practice has been already accepted. So for the other people who can't really access the internet, we have problems sharing to them about the practice, because even when we tell them that the practice does good and they accept it, when they go to the churches or worship centers or like mosques, when they tell them their religious leaders about the practice they do, they tell them that it's satanic, it's a cult. And so we have resistance from the religious leaders. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. I'm sorry that you face that barrier when particularly people saying it's satanic. Is that kind of how the community responds to it, or is it only those that are in religious places of worship specifically?
Our country is not like the rest of the world. We are a British colony, and then colonial masters bringing the colonial rule, they were using religion a lot to soften people. So most people are religious. They're either Christian or Muslim. So it's either way. We have a few people who, like if it's out of 100, there is just 1% of people who are not religious.
Wow, that is a very high percentage.
Yeah.
So, for some of our listeners that aren't very familiar with Uganda as a whole, can you tell us more about your country?
First of all, Uganda is a very beautiful country, I must say. We only have 2 seasons in a year. We have 2 seasons. We have the wet season and the dry season. We don't have the winter, summer, like all autumn, spring, like you guys do. Uganda is a very green country. We have lots of big forests. We have the gorillas. So if you're not on, the only countries where you find the gorillas, it will be Uganda, Congo, and Rwanda. So it's only the 3 countries. And we are crossed direct by the equator. And we have 105 tribes. And our country is ethnically diverse. That means all those tribes speak different languages, they have different cultures and different beliefs. And we have kings, we have kingdoms, and every kingdom has a king. And we have, of course, the government, the central government, but also our kingdoms are very powerful. And so we are deeply rooted into culture, I must say. Yeah. And something maybe to know about our country is we have the source of the River Nile in Uganda.
Keisha, I have loved talking with you and hearing more about your story and also about all of the amazing things you're doing in Uganda for your country. I expect some of our listeners might be curious and might want to learn more about you and get in touch or ask a question. I'm going to link all of your social media channels on the show notes. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, just go to the show notes and all of Mugisha's links will be there. And they'll also be on my website, wildyogatribe.com/yoga in Uganda. There will be a transcription of this episode as well, so you can read and follow along while you listen. So Mugisha, it's been such a joy to be with you. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you very much for choosing Uganda, and thank you very much for choosing me to tell my story. And thank you for having these stories of different yoga teachers from all over the world.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. My conversation with Mugisha Ali Allan, a yoga teacher from Uganda, was so touching as he shared stories with us about teaching yoga to children with special needs and children who are suffering from lifelong illnesses. He also shared how grateful he is to be a part of people's healing journey. If you're looking to tune into a podcast episode that's all about about the healing journey of yoga and how yoga is the art and science of well-being, then this is the conversation for you. Thank you for listening to the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. Be well. Thank you for the gift of your attention today. If you feel called, please share this episode with someone who you think could benefit from it. Leaving a review would also be so appreciated. I also hope you can join me online on my website, wildyogatribe.com, or on social media. I would love to get to know you better. I would love to share with you and to hear your thoughts. Send me a DM, send me a note, get in touch. It would be great to hear from you. And as always, be well, dear one, be well.